You are listening to the Bold Dreams Held Loosely podcast, the go-to podcast for soul-led coaches, leaders, and healers. My name is Taryn Watts, and I am a master certified coach and the founder of the Mind Rebel Academy, an ICF-accredited coaching school where we train and support people to fully express their purpose through world-class coaching skills. Join me and fellow faculty member Michelle Theriault as we dive into the world of coaching and model what it looks like to live deeply examined lives. Inside these episodes, we have raw, honest, very human conversations that are expanding our minds, opening us up to new possibilities, and keeping us steadfastly committed and focused to walking our path towards our deepest yearnings and greatest visions. And our intention is that they do the same for you. Enjoy. Here we are.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Ah.
So we had this whole plan to talk about a topic, and we got on here and started talking about what's really up and going on, and thought, okay, this is what we need to talk about.
Yeah.
This is what
This is what we're really inside of and wants to come out of us and be explored.
Okay, where do we start?
I don't know exactly where to start. However, I'd love to paint the picture of I have been experiencing in my personal life just sort of a wildly intense period of something. And I thought, oh my God, what is happening? And through conversations with a few other people in the MRA team, and actually, to be fair, there's some of this in the air in the world, not just the MRA team, but we're realizing there's a connection. It's not even just my individual stuff coming up, your individual stuff, other people's individual stuff. There's a really cool connection that is really sinking into us here. Which, yeah, I would love for us to keep exploring.
Yeah. All right. Okay, you know what? Can we frame this discussion, this conversation around the framework of the hero's journey? I don't think we've ever done that. I think we've talked about certain elements of a hero's journey on our podcast, but we've actually never been through the stages. Is that true?
I'm sure we've spoken about them a little bit like here and there, but I love this idea. I don't know if we've ever fully
talked about the whole circle, the whole journey. Okay.
Yes.
So this is part of something we teach in our coach training. It's a coaching framework that doesn't belong to the MRA. In fact, this framework was not meant to be a coaching framework. It's called the hero's journey. It's a theory developed by an American professor. His name was Joseph Campbell. And what he did was he looked at, he created a monomyth. So this is called a universal story structure that takes a character through a sequence of stages along a story. So he started to identify and dissect patterns of a universal story structure. And what he did when he started dissecting this is that he observed the presence of this hero's journey that moved through this story across both culture and history. So we're gonna map out the hero's journey in just a moment. But think as we're talking through these stages, if you just even think about your favorite Disney movie or your favorite novel, many stories that you read, many movies that are produced in Hollywood that you see follow this universal story structure of the hero's journey. There's also something that feels really familiar in the story, in the hero's journey. Every time we talk about this in our coaching program, and we have our students really map out their hero's journey and where their lives intersect the hero's journey, there's something that always feels so familiar about the hero's journey to people. And I think it's because we can see ourselves in these stories. And when I first learned about Joseph Campbell's work, when I first learned about the hero's journey, I remember I remember thinking, these stages that Joseph Campbell has laid out about his hero's journey mimic the journey of transformation. They to a T. Every transformation that I have ever experienced, I've gone through these stages of a hero's journey. And so when I learned about Joseph Campbell's work, and it was meant for story structures, I thought, what a powerful coaching tool. Like, what a powerful framework to be able to place ourselves, our clients, along our hero's journey so that we can know that these stages are normal and natural. We can begin to place ourselves on our hero's journey so that we can recognize when we're feeling a call to adventure, so that we can know when we're in a death and rebirth and everything feels dark and like we want to give up. When we know that these are the natural stages of transformation, it helps us to keep going. And we can place ourselves on it. We can make more sense of it. So that's why the hero's journey is such a powerful framework to use in coaching or to use in self-development. So, which is also why we want to frame this conversation around that framework. So, for those listening, for those of you who've never heard of the hero's journey before, I want you to imagine a big circle. If you Google the hero's journey, you'll see this, right? So just imagine a big circle. And this is the diagram we're gonna map out. So imagine a big circle and divide that circle in half. And the top half of the circle represents the ordinary world. And the bottom half of the circle represents the world of the unknown. And so every hero on their journey begins in what's called the ordinary world. That's stage one. And the ordinary world, it can look different for every person. It can feel different for every person. This is also like an interesting stage. Sometimes the ordinary world feels so uncomfortable or so monotonous or so boring or so like rat race, whatever that rat race represents to you. You feel this like aching for something different. You feel this like, oh God, this can't be it. Sometimes the ordinary world is incredibly pleasant and wonderful and beautiful. So you can see that in different movies. So, for example, um, my favorite Disney movie is Moana. And so in Moana's journey, her ordinary world was she was meant to take her father's place as as the leader of her village. And that was her ordinary world. That was her trajectory. That was what she was supposed to do. But she felt this like call to the ocean. She felt this call to adventure. She felt like, oh, this is not my path. And you could see her really fighting that. Um, and so that's an example of like almost a settling feeling, or if I stay here, I'm settling, or because I feel uncomfortable in this ordinary world. Another example of an ordinary world that actually feels pleasant is the Lord of the Rings. So
Mm.
Frodo in the Shire, he loved the Shire. He never wanted to leave the Shire. He was like forced to leave the Shire. He didn't want to go to
Mm.
Mordor. Like, he didn't want that call to adventure, right? He was so grateful for where he was, but it's like life had other plans for him. So that's stage one, the ordinary world. Stage two is a call to adventure. And so this is where the hero begins. Again, they begin in the ordinary world and they feel this call to adventure. Sometimes it's like the softest little whisper that they oftentimes will refuse the call. In fact, that's stage three. It's the refusal of the call. And it might feel like the teeniest yearning that's starting to like bubble up in their being. Um, or it might be like Frodo, where the call to adventure is literally, it's almost feeling like something outside of you is saying, "Nope, we're going this way." So that stage 2 is like that call to adventure. And the idea is that most heroes will refuse the call, refuse their yearnings, suppress it, push it down. Oh, that's not possible for my life, or that's too big, or don't be too greedy, or don't dream too big, or whatever it is. There's so many reasons we refuse the call to adventure. But the thing with a hero's journey is that the call starts getting louder and louder and louder and louder. And the more plugged in we are to our own selves, living like an authentic life, true to ourselves, it's almost like the more sensitive our radar becomes for this call to adventure. So I know in like for me, like in a previous life, I would say I was stuck in the ordinary world for years and years and years and years and years and years. And the call to adventure was there, but the suppression was also much larger than the actual call to adventure. And life began speaking to me in louder and louder and louder and louder ways until life was screaming. And sometimes that scream can be a complete and utter breakdown, like a crumbling of things that used like it's like the ordinary world is becoming more and more uncomfortable, that you are being invited to look at that call. Things are being stripped away so that you can answer that call. And Michelle, am I forgetting any stages? Sorry, I'm going to keep going, but am I forgetting any important information about those first 3 stages?
I don't think so. The only other thing is sometimes the refusal of the call is because it occurs to you as like, that is dangerous. If I embark on that journey, that is dangerous. So tied in with the yearning, sometimes there is just intense fear, like that's irresponsible, that's dangerous. I am not brave enough to take that risk.
Yes. The story that comes up for me is one of my biggest hero's journeys was the call to leave the corporate world to become a coach full time. And I remember that call being so getting louder and louder and louder. And it took a long time for the call to get so loud that it overrode the fear of the unknown, which is what has to happen. But I remember they're in that stage of refusing the call. I remember my kids were so little, they were babies and they were both in cribs. And I had this great big, great big dream of being an entrepreneur brewing in my heart. But I had this really safe corporate job with benefits and a steady paycheck and a pension. And I would look at these babies sleeping with this dream growing bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And I would watch them. I would literally go into their rooms at night, watch them sleep in their cribs. And I would just burst into tears. And I would think, maybe my job in this life is just to raise, like, is to stay put, stay in this corporate job, stay safe so that so that I can just give them all the opportunities and like they could be brave with their lives. Like maybe that wasn't my generation or my life's work was just to create so much safety for them that they could go, live their dreams, and mine could just maybe another lifetime. Maybe it just wasn't mine. And I would have this internal battle with myself until I realized that if I want to raise brave humans, I have to show them what that looks like. I have to model that for them. And there was a tipping point in that fear, that that there like a lot of time of that internal battling had to happen before the tipping point happened. And so, yeah, it can feel like you're being irresponsible. I felt I was being selfish. Like,
Mhm.
how could I take away the safety from my family? I'm putting them in danger. That's what it felt like. It can
Yeah.
feel so gripping.
Yeah. Is there ever I don't know, if there's ever a time I've needed and craved safety the most, it's when I've had babies. Like,
Mhm.
there's something about that, like, and it's also crazy that you had 2 babies in 2 cribs at the same time.
I know.
I c but I can just I can just imagine, like, the bravery it must have taken for you to be like, "It's okay. I'll find a way to take care of these 2 precious little babies." You know? It's so
Yeah.
that's wildly brave.
And, it's funny because I shouldn't say it's funny, it's interesting because that call to adventure had been present before my children were born.
Mm,
And it's interesting that you'd think before having two humans that I was responsible for, that I would have taken the leap beforehand when it
mm,
was just Sean and I, and we could afford to do that. And it was just, I don't know, it was, but it actually took them for
mm,
me. It could have been it, I could have swung either way. I could have been like, no, this is now far too risky because I have babies. But then it was also like, they were also my fire. I cannot be away from them from 9 to 5 every single day in a job that I am not passionate about. Like,
mm,
what kind? No, like that's not even an option anymore. That's no longer an option for me.
yeah,
And so they also became a fire. Like they also became a fuel to me answering the call,
mhm,
because my life away from them needed to be meaningful and vibrant and creative. And that's what was going to make me an incredible mom to them, you
mhm.
know?
Yeah, I do. Yeah,
So it just made it magnified everything.
yeah.
So the call to adventure. So many people get stuck here. So many people refuse the call and perhaps refuse the call for their whole life on some things,
Yeah.
and stay put in their ordinary world, whatever that might look like, because of fear, because of limiting beliefs, or the things that society says is not good or right or safe, or whatever it might be. Stage 3. So you've got, again, beginning in the ordinary world. You've got the call to adventure. You've got um, the the refusal of the call to adventure mixed into that. And then you've got stage 3. This is where a mentor appears. And this can, a mentor appearing can happen in so many different ways. It can be the right book. It can be the words to like the song that you're listening to. It can
Mm,
be some wise advice from a friend. It could be someone you meet who's done what you want to do. This is where we have to be on the lookout for what that meant. It can be actually like a physical mentor that you meet and that's helping you to cross that threshold. So if I think about Moana, it's her grandmother. So one day when Moana is just feeling, I think she's looking at the ocean and she's just about to give up on her dreams, or that call to adventure is getting stronger, but she's just, that inner battle and resistance is going on inside of her. And her grandmother approaches her and says, I was there the day the ocean chose you. And that was her mentor appearing, right? To say, like, you're not crazy. You're not making this up. Like, this is possible for your life. It's just this reminder, this is possible for you. And that the mentor appearing, whether again it's a physical mentor or the words you read in a book or the song lyrics or whatever it is, helps the hero to finally cross over that threshold. And that crossing the threshold is literally, if you think back to the circle, is the step from the ordinary to the unknown world. It's the hero
Mhm.
saying, I'm doing this. I
Mm.
am I am launching this dream for my life. I am all in. I am doing this. And that doesn't have to mean, that can just be even the launching of a vision in the world. It could also be something physical like, I don't know, I'm leaving my corporate job, or I'm putting the plan in place to leave my corporate job, or I'm saying yes to this thing that I want, or I'm traveling for a year, or whatever the call to adventure is. It's this decision to say yes. I'm
Mm.
all in.
What was that for you, meeting the mentor? Like, what was the moment or the person or the thing that
Uh-huh.
was it for you for leaving your corporate job?
Okay, I know it. I can recall the exact conversation.
Hmm.
I can recall exactly where we were sitting, the exact conversation. At that time, there was a job opening up in my organization, and it had like a little bit of coaching in it, but a little bit of coaching. If I always said, if I was going to stay in the corporate world, it would have been because I was a corporate coach. That was my whole job, was coaching. I would have loved that. I would have loved that. Um, and so there was this job opening in my organization, and I applied for it, and I was in the interview process. And it wasn't all coaching. It had like just a little bit of coaching in there that I was like, oh, maybe this is the answer. Maybe this is where I belong here. Maybe like staying here, I could do this. And I remember having a conversation. I was out for coffee with her name is Leslie Rohansky, and she was the corporate coach at the organization I was working for at the time. She was the only corporate coach that they had at the time. And she knew my dreams. She knew all my yearnings and desires because we had such a deep conversation, and she was a mentor of mine in that career. And she was listening to me talk this through and talk about, this could be the job, like this could be it. And she said to me, what if this is the shiny dangling carrot in your face? Like, what if this is the shiny dangling carrot? And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, is this really what you want?
Mm.
And it was this moment of, no, this is not what I want. I would have to like I could see what's the expression, like square peg in a round hole. I was like shoving my square peg in this round hole, like, baby, this is where I belong here
Mm.
in the safety of this environment. And that conversation stuck with me. And it was a realization that, no, this like it's not what I want. And she held up a mirror for me of what I want, what my true dreams are. And this is possible for you. Sometimes it's, our mentors can hold that dream up for us, and they can show us what is possible for our lives before we believe it, and hold that mirror up for us until we start to believe it. And
Mm.
that's what she did for me in that moment. And that was the realization that I got to go. I
Mm.
got to go.
Yeah. Okay, you know what I find really interesting now that I think about this, and correct me if I'm wrong on the timeline, but is it true that you had already done your coach training,
Mhm.
completely finished it before, then you were still in this, like, still in your ordinary world, and this conversation with Leslie happened after?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Hmm.
So I had been a graduated coach. Um, I graduated from my coach training the day my son was born, the day Cooper was born. And so I was a graduated coach. I was coaching on the side. And yes, this was after.
So it really took some time, even though a part of you was walking in this direction. You were a certified coach, you were coaching on the side. I'm hearing there is still, like, a wild amount of doubt and
Yes.
uncertainty, like, I don't even know if this could be real.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. My runway for that ordinary was a long one. And
Yeah.
I I think I am a naturally risk adverse person, and I didn't grow up in a family of entrepreneurs, didn't have much modeling of what entrepreneur life could be like. And it felt like such a such a terrifying and risky. Like, what about a pension? Benefits? What happens if my kids need braces and I don't have a corporate job to pay for that? Like, it is just, they call it the golden handcuffs. That's, they call it the golden handcuffs. And I couldn't conceive of a different way because I didn't have a different way to look to. I
Mm.
couldn't conceive of a different way. I remember I remember I think around that time, maybe Instagram was like new, or I was new to Instagram. And I remember, like, for the first time following these influencers or following these people. And the people I was drawn to were women who had young families who were entrepreneurs. They weren't coaches, they were doing other things. One was Emily Lay. She makes these beautiful um, journals and agendas, and I still to this day buy her agendas. And I remember looking at her life, and our kids were a similar age, and thinking, like, she was a model of someone out there doing this. She was had young babies, and she was an entrepreneur, and she was like killing it. She was doing amazing, and she became, I don't know her personally, but she became this dream expander for me of someone who's out there following their dreams and being successful at it. And my path is going to look different than hers, but perhaps she was another mentor in disguise, right? Like,
Yeah.
that was sprinkled along the way. Um and so it did, you're right. It took on it had the discomfort of the ordinary world had to become greater than the discomfort of taking the risk and crossing that threshold into the unknown world. And
Yeah.
for me, it just took a long time.
Yeah. I think that's so possibly so important and might be so reassuring for so many people to hear. I'm thinking of so many students who, you shared little bits of your story many times here and there, and they know little bits. But I think it's probably pretty easy to also imagine, even though you share the challenges, I think it's pretty easy to imagine, no, Taryn just like, yes, it was challenging, but she just made this like leap and she left. And um, I think it's so important for people to hear that this was years and years and years, even after you were done your coach training, years and years and years. And look how beautiful the timing is. Like, look at how it all ended up at the end of the day. And I mean, the story even continues, right? Like,
Right.
and I think about there's so many students that we get to hear them share like bits of like, here's the call I'm hearing. And with that comes with this sense of, I'm behind. I've got to hurry up and do it. They'll be like a few months into their coach training and they're like, I'm behind. I don't have a website. I don't have
Yeah.
I don't have my whole vision planned out. I don't know how I'm going to do it. And and I don't think you have to wait. I think if you're raring to go, I think you can make anything happen, but I also think it's just so important to hear this reminder of, it's not wrong or you're not behind. And it's okay if you just put one foot in front of the other for
Mhm.
a few years as the path unfolds, and you give yourself some grace and take care of the parts of you that need more time, and take care of the parts of you that need a little more information, take care of the parts of you that are waiting for an extra sign, or like, uh, so I'm so glad that came up here.
Yeah. And I also feel there's a divine timing to it all.
Mm.
And the times where I've tried to push my own timing, it's just like it's just never worked out.
Yeah.
There's a divine timing to it, to us, and there's a responsibility for sure for us to hear the whispers, hear the calls, answer the calls. And I think that when I think about the length of time that took me to answer that call, and the emotional roller coaster that came along with that, just the emotional roller coaster that came along with that, what this framework has helped me. I didn't have this framework then. I didn't know about the hero's journey. That wasn't like, something I was using at the time. But now, having been through many little ones and some really big ones like that one after, now I feel the emotional roller coaster that comes along with the various stages, they feel a little bit more manageable. And I'm more attuned now to the call.
Mm.
I know the feeling. Oh, here we go. I know the feeling of a new call to adventure. I
Yeah.
felt this. I felt this before. I also know what happens if I refuse this for too long. Shit's going to hit the fan
Mm.
some way or another in my life. And I can recognize when the mentor appears. I can recognize the feeling of crossing the threshold. I can anticipate what's coming in the unknown world, which is the unpleasant part. Um, so I think the more we work with this, the more we commit to our own hero's journeys, and the hero's journey never ending, this constant evolution of our hero's journey, the more we can have fun along all the various stages of it. But that one in particular was years and years and years in the making.
Yeah. I kinda giggled when you said we can have fun because it's really true, but also at the same time, sometimes it's like, do you ever see those memes where it's like your life is a burning train wreck and you're like, "Yeah, it's fun."
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes it's that kind of fun, to be fair.
Totally. Totally.
Mm.
Because what comes after crossing the threshold?
Wait, pause. Can we
Okay.
talk about actually just crossing the threshold for a
Okay.
sec?
Let's talk about it.
Because there's meeting the mentor.
Yeah.
And then it feels like crossing the threshold is its own thing. It's like
Yes.
meeting meeting the mentor, there's still a chance that you could like, oh, backtrack and refuse the call and kind of waver a little. But there's something about crossing that threshold that's like a point of no return.
The point of no return.
Yeah.
I am so in movies, this is often depicted as like there's an actual doorway that appears, and the hero is actually walking through a doorway or walking away. Moana is on the boat walking, on the boat towards the ocean. Frodo, you see him walking with Gandalf through the Shire, and I'm pretty sure there's like this tunnel they walk through. And so there is a point of no return. I have committed to this journey, whatever this journey is. You know what's really helpful is naming. So having this as a framework and naming, what is the yearning I feel? What is like what getting clearer, and this is where your visioning work and your vision statement can be so helpful. But naming, what is this yearning I feel? So it's not this elusive feeling that I something more, it's like I no, I sense a bigger possibility for my life in this area. I For me in that at that time of I am going to be an entrepreneur. I am leaving my corporate job and I am going to do this. I'm going to be a coach full time. I'm going to do this. It's a commitment. There's no, so naming it and understanding where it is that you're going. That's really helpful and almost like necessary because you're claiming something when you cross that threshold, whatever that
Mm.
is. Whatever that is. This is the point of no return.
Mm.
You cross over and you commit
Yeah.
to your journey.
Yeah.
And you are now 2 feet in to the unknown world.
And here's where it gets hard and messy.
And here's where it gets really mucky. So the next stage, right after crossing the threshold, is called the path of trials and failures.
Mm.
um, so we say the point of no return, but really, there at any point in the unknown world, you could more than likely, unless you've burned all your bridges, you could more than likely somewhat go back to ordinary in some way or another. Um, but the next stage is the path of trials and failures. And this is where the hero of the story encounters obstacles, challenges. People will attempt to stop them on their quest, maybe mirroring their insecurities. For me at that stage, it was I had such a safe, cushy job with a pension and a benefits and two babies at home. For me, thank goodness my Sean was so supportive, but the mirroring was happening all around me with other people in my life. I remember my parents being like, what do you want to do? Like, sorry, pardon me, right? Like mirroring all how is this going to work? What, right? The people in your life mirroring your insecurities. So, um, and sometimes this is family or friends with the best of intentions, but what they're mirroring back to you is their insecurities for you and also their lenses of the world.
Yeah.
So oftentimes when we're on a hero's journey, we're trying to do something that is uniquely ours. And so having a model for what that looks like can be really hard to find. There's no handbook that says here's how you get from the ordinary world over here to your vision. Like there's no handbook. It's yours. It's unique. There's no one who can say these are the steps to get there. The path of trials and failures. This is like, and what's interesting is that when you cross the threshold, often that moment of crossing the threshold, there's excitement. There's like, yes, I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. Or I'm going to do this. There's a claiming, there's a vision, there's like a hopefulness, there's a excitement, there's a passion, there's an inspiration, there's an energy. And then the next stage is literally the path of trials and failures. Like squashing all of that down. It's such an emotional roller coaster.
Mm.
Um, and the other thing about this stage, I also want to say is it's not all trials and failures. There will
Mm.
also be right when you need it, and not a moment sooner, there will be people, messages, mentors, just like perfectly placed along your way, like whispering to you in one way or another. Again, maybe it's lyrics you hear, maybe it's the book you read, maybe it's just that conversation with a friend you needed to have. Maybe you see someone online doing what you want to do and you're like, whoa, wait a second, it is possible. Whatever it is. There's also as many trials and mirroring of trials and failures, there's also these like people, things, circumstances, events that are placed also showing you that it is possible. Does that make sense? Am I describing that properly?
Yeah, like in one way or another, there's these little signs and whispers that say, keep going.
Mhm.
Your dreams are coming. Um, I'm thinking about a hero's journey of mine, and it's funny, you're right, almost in equal measure, there's like hope and possibility and like the reason to continue. And my reality is this is very hard and I don't know how to figure it out. I remember in my big relationship hero's journey, there was like always two things at the same time. There was the actual um navigating the actual relationships that were coming in, and they were mirroring things I didn't want. It was like I still wasn't receiving the type of love and commitment, like, that wasn't showing up, and I was feeling bad a lot, like, I'm trying to make this work, and I don't know how it's not working, and at the same time, I was reading these books that were describing and validating, you know, maybe even less than books, but, like, there'd be people on Instagram or pieces of books that would hint at, "Yes, this is possible. Wait for this. This is what you deserve." And so I was holding both at the same time for a while. Like, there's a real tension during that time, a real, "I want this, and this is not what's happening, and it's hard, and I don't quite know how to bridge the gap."
Yeah. The tension, I love how you describe that. That and maybe the next stage is where I am right now.
Mm.
I can feel that tension inside of me of I've crossed a threshold. I have crossed a new threshold for my business, for this business, for my vision, for my life. I've crossed it. I am all in. And now I'm in the stage of the tension, I wake up with my I wake up in like sweats and oh my god, how is this possible? Like how is this possible? Like I with all my freaking stuff, all my limiting beliefs, all my old ways of thinking, all my it's all bubbling up to the surface, all of it.
Mm.
All of it. And I'm in the tension right now. Just like
Mm.
painfully waiting to get to be done with this phase. Painfully waiting. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just I would be really curious to hear, like, a little bit of compare and contrast from what you remember from, your the hero's journey of leaving your corporate job. What was the tension that you can remember in this phase about that story? And then I also wanna hear about the flavor of what's happening right now.
You know, at the heart of it, this actually makes me want to cry, but at the heart of it, it's the same. When I am stretching and growing and in this phase of a big hero's journey, I safety is what safety and uh, is what gets brought to the surface for me. And what that means for me is, or maybe safety is not the right word. Hold on, let me think this through. But it feels this is the same. There's a feeling of, can I trust myself? That's big. That's really big, actually.
Yeah.
You know what's waking me up at night?
What?
Thinking I'm not thinking through and I'm making a mistake.
Mm.
Not my big decisions, not in the vision, but in small decisions. I've made a mistake here. I'm making a mistake here. Can I trust myself? Can I trust that this is actually the way I want to do it, even though there is no model that I am consciously aware of? There is no model that I am consciously aware of for what I want to do next,
Mm.
for what this hero's journey that I'm on right now. And there's no model there's no book, there's no business book that tells you this is how you can get what this is this is this is this is this has been collectively born out of all of our souls in the MRA, right? Like we're all on this big hero's journey together within the MRA. There's no model for what we want to do here. And I question, am I strong enough to make this vision a reality? Am I smart enough? Am I the right kind of leader for this? Could I actually lead this? Am I smart enough business wise? Am I making good financial choices here? Like, it's like all my limiting beliefs are coming up. It's very similar to what was coming up when I left my corporate job to become an entrepreneur. Am I smart enough to be an entrepreneur? Am I financially savvy enough? Do I know enough? Am I strong enough to manifest this vision? Is my energy strong enough? Am I powerful enough to make this happen? It's so tender right now. It makes me want to cry because it's
Yeah.
so tender right
Mm.
now. You
Mm.
know, if I was on
Yeah.
the other side of this and it's here, I'd be like, of course I'm strong enough, powerful enough. I can create anything my heart, but right now it's so tender and I'm questioning my strength, my power, my vision, can I trust myself?
Mm. Yeah. It's funny because we started, framing the hero's journey to illustrate the first part. We've been using, one of your biggest hero's journey is leaving the corporate world and becoming a full-time coach. Um and we all know how that story turned out. In fact, so you made it through that entire hero's journey. And even though it doesn't seem like it now, it seems like it was easy. You felt that type of fear and tension along the way, and it all worked out. And then you did a whole other one. There was another call to adventure of, oh, I'm not just meant to be a coach. I'm going to create this beautiful school. And, I am going to create the Mind Rebel Academy. And that was a whole hero's journey. And then you found yourself in this place in the ordinary world of like, this is lovely. And I did it. And what we're talking about right now, this fear and this tenderness that you're talking about now, is this whole other hero's journey that's begun. And I want us to keep talking about that a little bit. So I'm wondering if you want to just lightly frame the essence of what this hero's journey is right now.
Okay. So, yeah, this hero's journey. So, the interesting thing about hero's journeys is that, and we'll keep going through the stages as we talk through this, but eventually, the ending point of a hero's journey is an arrival of your dream, your vision. It might look very different than what you had originally anticipated, but in essence, you have arrived and grown into the next iteration of who you're becoming in this world. It's more than just the manifestation of the things, it's the arrival of you. And so for me, when I take a step back and look at from corporate to entrepreneurship, there was a point of literal arrival. I am now an entrepreneur. I am now a coach. I just got my kids on and off the bus. That was part of the vision. And then got to come in and open up my computer and wait for my first client to arrive of the day. Like there is an arrival and not just the physical manifestation of it, but it's like, who am I being? I am, I am this now. It's not that I want to be, I am showing up in the world as this version of me. I am confident. I am financially savvy. I am making, I have arrived here. And so at any point in our lives, we are always somewhere along our hero's journey. We're all somewhere. Sometimes so when we are in an arrival, we're actually reintegrating back into the ordinary world, back at stage one. We've made a full circle just as this new version of who we are. So here we are back in the ordinary world. And sometimes that ordinary world can feel just blissful, like an arrival. And 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 sometimes it can feel blissful. And then we go about our lives, and then all of a sudden, slowly but surely, there's a new yearning. There's a new call for growth. There's a new call to adventure. And the more we go through this and again, this frame helps us to recognize that call to adventure so that we're not ignoring it, so that we can recognize it when it comes, so that no longer does it have to be a scream. Now it can just be the slightest little whisper. Oh, something's coming. I feel something brewing. And then all of a sudden we're being invited back onto another hero's journey, because the points that happen in the unknown world, the tension is large. There's lots of stuff, lots of growth, lots of just uncomfortable thing. We're not meant to live there forever. Like we're meant to come back. We're this in this cyclical process. Okay, so yes, you're right. I've been on many. entrepreneurship was a big one. Creating the MRA was another one. So for a while, I've been really blissful in my ordinary world. And I've had micro heroes journeys along the way, but I'm like kind of zooming out and looking at the monstrous ones. So this one was a little bit different than some of the others, where I was more like Frodo in the Shire.
Yeah.
I was like, this is wonderful. I was going through this gratitude practice of just being so present and grateful for everything that's here. I was doing that for a little while, and I was almost like it's almost like that gratitude practice. I mean, I've had experiences of this before, where a deep gratitude practice over an extended period of time that gets you into the open flow,
Mm.
like taps you into something cosmic, something outside of you.
Mm.
Because I did not initiate this hero's journey. Something else initiated it. Something else initiated it in the
Mm.
ethers, you know?
Yeah.
I was happy and joyful and grateful, and just so grateful for the MRA as it is today. And then you and I started having these conversations, and you were feeling a call to adventure, but in a different way. You were
Mm.
feeling a discomfort. You were
I
feel Yeah, go ahead. Talk about what
y
you were feeling.
Yeah, it's funny because you were in the place of I don't know if I've actually ever heard you so surrendered, so unattached, so peaceful. It was like you were a Buddhist monk for a while, just like, "Whatever comes, comes. Life is good. I have everything I need." And I was experiencing the polar opposite. I was like, life is tight and stagnant, and every day that goes by I feel more and more constricted, like a snake that desperately needed to shed some skin. Like just it was like itchy and tight, and I was desperate. And I guess it was yeah, so my call to adventure was so uncomfortable. And it's funny because I knew the bigger picture of my call to adventure. I knew it was around the themes of money and vocation, and also on a deeper level, like a really deep sense of nervous system safety around support and money that I've never experienced in my life before. Like all of those things, I knew that was like the flavor of what I was itching for, but I really didn't have any idea about the details of what I wanted or needed. And so cue conversations with you back and forth over, I guess, like a couple of months, really. Like, this has been an ongoing conversation for almost ever, but it got really acute and specific over a period of a couple months. And you were already so unattached and just like you weren't looking for anything. Um, so the combination of you being so surrendered and open, and and there was a part of me that was like really needing something, but I was also unattached to what that was. Like I was really committed to the big picture of I know this is the path I need to be on in the bigger picture, but I really didn't know the details. And so there was a type of surrender that I had, and the combination of those energies mixing started sparking something, started sparking this new possibility that I think we've crossed the threshold,
Oh, we've
and
crossed the
we're
thresholds.
and we are now feeling the tensions, and we yeah and I even think that I've been experiencing um some of the well I don't want to get too far ahead. I want us to keep going around, but I've been experiencing the tensions very dramatically building to the breaking point, the ultimate next stage of death
Death
and
and
rebirth,
rebirth.
which is a very intense, the most intense piece, I think, is the
Mhm.
death and rebirth. um so I would love to hear from you about more about it's so cool because you're actually in it. We're actually in the path of trials and failures, and there's this death and rebirth coming because we're in it. I would love to talk even more about what that is right now for
Mhm.
you.
Okay, can I just go back t to
Yes.
the story we're in right now?
Mm,
What's actually interesting, and I've experienced this before, it's not that my gratitude was coming from a place of, I have everything in my vision that I could ever possibly imagine. It was actually not that at all. And and I think this is important because I've experienced this before.
mm,
I experienced this twice before, where the universe almost grabbed my hand in a different direction that I wasn't anticipating I was ready for.
mm,
And what came before every one of these experiences was a deep state of gratitude and surrender for where I was today, despite the vision not being here yet. So the other two experiences I had were, one was the transition from a one-on-one coaching practice to the MRA. The MRA wasn't part of my vision. I never had plans of being a teacher, never considered myself a teacher, never thought I could do. This was not the plan. I had left my corporate job. I had a thriving one-on-one coaching practice. Oh my God, the gratitude that I was feeling. Like, was I financially as abundant as I, in my greater vision? No. Like, there was still room to go, but I was like, oh, I was just so grateful for where I was. I was in that Buddhist, like, open, surrendered state. I really was. I was practicing so much gratitude at that time. And then all of a sudden, the whispers became louder and louder and louder. And it was the universe pulling me in this direction. It was started with clients at the end of our sessions going through the Mind Rebel methodology. Can you teach me to do what you just did for me so that I could do this with others? And I would like dismiss it at first and laugh it off. And that got louder and louder and louder. And I at that time I had already created, adapted this framework I was working with this framework, and I was like, this is a whisper. This is getting louder. Oh my God, I need to answer this. If I don't answer this, what could happen? Right. And that's how the MRA was born. It was like, I was just in this deep place of gratitude. I wasn't looking for anything. The same thing happened when we found our dream home. The home I was living with was not, and I've told this story before on past podcasts. I would walk around kissing the walls of my house, of my old home, even though it was not the home. But I was just like, thank you, thank you, thank you, like in this deep state of gratitude. And then the home found us. We weren't looking for it. I didn't think we were ready to buy a home. It was just, and so it's the same thing that happened here. I had been feeling, I had this vision. I have this vision of what I want, what I'm yearning for, where I'm going. And a lot of it has to do with prosperity, abundance, freedom, time freedom. And I almost over the last couple of years have been, what is it? Like, I've been on that path. And I reached a point several months ago of, okay, what I'm doing is not working. I need to get back to my place of gratitude and just,
mm,
if this is all it is, if this is all it is, I need to be okay with that. Just like the home. If this is all it is, I need to be okay with that. Just like my one-on-one coaching practice, even though that was such a massive, accomplishment for me. But if this is all it is forever, like I needed to get to a place of true, pure surrender, detachment, openness. Universe, I am at your mercy. Show me the way. And gratitude is what gets me there. And so here I am. Took me like some time to get my mindset in that state, right? But I was doing all my gratitude practicing and all the things. And I was like, oh my gosh, I feel it. I feel open. I feel unattached. Yes, the vision is still there, but is this the path? I don't know. I'm going to get out of my own way. Like, I just like, so I remember one day you asking me, it's like, what's the vision of like the MRA? Where are we going? And it was almost like this question of, and I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. Whatever we're doing is working. And if 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 this is it, then this is it. And where you were going was you wanted to create lines of prosperity, open funnels of prosperity for yourself that didn't involve your trading time for money.
Mhm.
Right? And so, your current role within the MRA, that's how you're paid. You show up for mentor calls and, your classes, and you're as an employee, you're trading time for money. So you didn't
Mhm.
want it. It's not that you wanted more work for money. You wanted another avenue of opening the channels of prosperity for yourself. And you were wondering, and you were open to where's that going to come from, but is it here? Is it possible to be here in the MRA? And so then this is what created these conversations between us. And where we landed was restructuring our entire business so that you and some other key members of the MRA are now part of a profit sharing pool, and now partners, so that we're literally restructuring this company so that now we've got all these partners in place. And and to me, I don't think there's anything that makes me happier,
Mm.
because being a solo entrepreneur was, again, not, I don't want to be a solo entrepreneur. Not that I'm solo. We've got this beautiful team around us, but I don't want to be the only one carrying all this. I don't want that,
Mm.
and I think about, that's not that I don't that's not where my strength lies.
Yeah.
And so we're restructuring things so that responsibilities are shared, and funds and resources are now being poured in everyone's direction. And the I get to take the pressure off my shoulders, and I get to share it with all of you. And you're all like, give me it. Give me
Yeah.
it. I want it. I want it. And so it's I didn't imagine this, couldn't have designed this, wasn't part of the vision statement. But wow, does this ever get me closer to what I wanted, what my vision is around freedom and support and teamwork and open lines of prosperity and abundance. But I couldn't have ever mapped this out in a vision statement a couple months ago, because I didn't
Mm.
know. I
Yeah,
didn't know. You know what I mean?
I do. It's interesting because what I was yearning for on a personal level and this new vision of the MRA are both pretty significant paradigm shifts. Like, it's not just about, oh, here's a new venture, a new plan. Um, we're deeply shifting paradigms. Like, I just, for me on a personal level, it was like a really big shift I was yearning for. Like the fundamental change between trading time for money to a new possibility where cycles of creative urges open up these funnels of like so much prosperity. Also a brand new paradigm inside my body of like going from fear, no matter how subtle. Like it's not like every day I'm walking around spiraling in my head about, whatever, but when I was a lot of my life, the shift, a baseline of true safety. And the way those ideas, the way, your yearnings and ideas trickled with my yearnings and ideas, and just this new plan that is like so fresh, by the way, like as you're describing it, we are literally explaining this live as we're figuring it out. What you're what you're creating, this model you're creating is such a paradigm shift that, like, literally there is no playbook to be found.
Mm.
Like, you are creating something like, "I've never seen this done, not in this way, I don't know." I am creating a brand new business model. Like, yep, it's scary to become, like, a full-time coach, other people have done it. Yep, it's scary to open a school that, other people there are other schools out there. It's like, I don't know. This model I'm creating, I don't know if it exists, I don't know, like, um, so it's like a wild paradigm shift right now that is bringing up all of the doubts and fears and limiting beliefs. Anything that is in our way of where we want to go, all of that is being stirred up to be felt and looked at right now.
And it would be incredibly easy to say, no, I, I changed my mind. I don't know. I changed my mind. It would be easy to go back to the ordinary world at this stage. In any hero's journey, this is the part where, so the path of trials and failures happens until you reach an actual breaking point, and that's stage 6, death and rebirth, which we were just talking about. And in movies and in novels, this is the climax of the story. This is where the hero faces something massive. And what we're talking about here is like psychologically massive. This is where the hero in most movies or stories, they reach their breaking point, and this is where, for Moana, this is at the point where she's in the boat and she's got the heart of Tafiti. I haven't watched this in so long, so I might be messing some of the details up. But I remember Moana came out right around the time I was I was like planning to leave the corporate world, or I was just in like the meeting a mentor, refusal to call, crossing the threshold, right around that time when Moana came out. And I used to watch that movie and bawl my eyes out because I could feel every feeling she felt.
Mm.
The ocean represented freedom to me and entrepreneurship, and I could feel it. Whenever she'd sing the song, like I was like, I could feel every moment of it. But when she's in the boat and she's got the heart of Tafiti and she throws it back in the ocean and says, the ocean chose wrong. I'm not strong enough for this. I can't do this. Life is mirroring all the reasons why I'm not strong enough, why I can't. So usually something happens, like an experience happens or something happens that it's like the final straw that just like brings up all your stuff. And and in the movies, in the books, the hero has to reach that breaking point, and then they've got to go within into the deepest depths of themselves, and they they're either in this like state of, I surrender, I get, like, that's how I get. I'm like, I give it up. I surrender, I wave the white flag, I give up. I give it up. I surrender how I'm me. My thoughts, my beliefs. I'm here. I'm not going around. I'm not turning around. I don't know if I'm strong enough for this. I don't know if I'm the leader who could create this business model, I don't know if this is even possible. I don't know
Mm.
if I am powerful enough for this. I don't know. I don't know. I am not giving up. I surrender. For me, my surrender is always to some kind of higher power, some kind of divinity. That's what I surrender it to. Um, this is the point where the hero of the story, in that surrender, like discovers their strength, discovers the pieces of themselves that are required to embody this new vision, this is where they find it in like the dark night of the soul, find it, like find their strength and find their resilience and find their courage and find their whatever it is. And this is the turning point in the story. This is where like the hero is made, you
Mhm.
know?
Yeah. And this is where, you said dark night of the soul. And I think we've talked about law of opposites before, but oftentimes there really is there's different flavors of hearing the call. I think there's also different flavors of the death and rebirth, Like you were describing the surrendering. There's a flavor of surrendering. I think there's a flavor of surrendering either way, but the way you get to surrender in the death and rebirth, sometimes it could be more courageous and intentional and like a willing surrender to the divine, the plan, the vision. Other times, this death and rebirth, um, it can almost feel like things are crumbling around you that bring you to your knees and almost force you into a surrender, but they didn't call it death and rebirth for nothing. They're like bringing you to your knees. That type of feeling of like death and crumbling of a piece of you, a piece of your old life, whether it's relationships crumbling, old things that made you feel safe, like losing things, whether it's horrible illness, whether it's actual death, whether it's financial loss, whether it's like, sometimes there can be a lot of pain that is the impetus for surrender in that death and rebirth moment.
You know what? In all the big heroes' journeys I've had, I can remember a recognition that, okay, I am approaching death and rebirth, or I'm in it. I surrender. Like in my empowered state, I surrender. I surrender. But I haven't really surrendered.
Mm.
All the big here, it's almost like the bigger the vision, the bigger the death and rebirth. Like it's almost they're in proportion. Because what is dying here is everything unlike that version of you has to come up to be healed and looked
Mhm.
at. And so in all the big death and rebirths, it's always been the moment I am brought to my knees, the moment I can't see my way forward. And it's like there's nothing else to do right now except turn around or surrender. I, this is too big for me.
Mhm.
This is too big. Show me the way. If you're talking to something outside of you, that's my inner dialogue. This is too big, and that's the like that can be the sweet transition spot of a death and rebirth.
Mm. I'm imagining the phrase that sometimes people say, Jesus, take the wheel,
Jesus, take the wheel, and
It's
like
like,
you mean it, like you
yeah,
really mean it,
yeah,
like actually
yeah.
take the wheel.
Not just like I'm having a hard day with my kids, but like, oh,
Yeah.
really for real. Yeah.
So what's interesting right now is that there's this group of us that have assembled,
Mm.
and now we've assembled, and we've launched a collective vision out into the world, and we are all now on our own individual heroes journeys because all of us need to arrive into this vision together. And so what we're experiencing right now is so fascinating because all of us are on our own individual heroes' journeys, and many of us are in this trials and failures, death and rebirth right now. And it looks all different.
Yeah. I'm finding this so fascinating right now because, I've been lucky enough to have people around me going through hero's journeys and getting to see, like, oh, yes, you're on your hero's journey. And I think about mine. And so I've always gotten to, I think we're all lucky enough to get to see that. But there's something wild happening because we all committed to this particular hero's journey together at the same moment. Like give or take a day when we were like fully, heart, like both feet in, heart and souls ready, but at the same moment. And it's really interesting because we all did some really, really deep discernment work on, like, this is not just a, hey, do you guys want to do this together? We did some really deep discernment work around what is my vision? What is my path forward that is like aligned to my soul? And is it this? Is this where my soul, is this where the universe, is this where higher power is truly calling me? And we all did that discernment and decided, yes. So there's a connection between our heroes' journeys that, like, this is so cool. I've never had anything like this. We're deeply connected in the themes of what we all want individually, and they all connect like really tangibly in creating this thing together. And so what's really fascinating is pretty quickly after, we start with all of this energy and creativity. And not long after, these wild challenges, these okay, wild challenges doesn't even describe it. All of a sudden, life brought forward into my life some, whoa, what do I even call these, Taryn? Like, what? I don't even know how to describe old fears, wounds being brought to the surface through situations that were extremely stressful and hard and challenging. And but they've been in like my personal world, not like, we're not
Mhm.
looking at the business being like, ah, I mean, you are, because
'Cause that's my stuff. Yeah.
yeah. um but it's happening in my personal life. And then I would connect to another team member, and it was like, wow, their energy is like something, some old deep stuff is being flared up, combined with other personal circumstances that are, putting them in a pressure cooker. And then I connect to another team member, and it's like, oh, something in life has exploded, and like the pain and the pressure cooker. And then I come and connect to you, and you're like, funny you should say that. I've been having a time myself. And it's so wild to know that, like, because we committed to this vision and we decided to go all in, we are all at the same time having everything in our personal lives that is not in the same energy or vibration or alignment with where we want to go. We're watching it come up and feeling the pain of it, and watching things crumble and needing to release things and needing to trust and deal with fears. And it's very intense for us all at the very exact same time, which I've never, this is so cool. Not cool when we're crying, because I think we've all been crying, a lot of us have been crying, but this is so cool that we are in this together and this is happening to us all.
Mhm. Yeah. Like when you really take a step back. This is why I think this framework is so powerful. Because imagine we didn't have this framework, and then all of us, it's almost could be like, is the universe trying to point us in another direction? You know, like maybe now's not the best time to blow everything
Mm.
up, or not that we're blowing anything up, but maybe this, but with this framework, we can look at it and say, whoa, what's actually happening here
Mm.
is everything that was perhaps beneath the surface. Maybe we weren't even conscious of it, or maybe we were like kind of pushing it down a little bit. Everything is coming up for healing now. And if we don't look at this, if we don't feel this, if we don't move through this, if we turn back around, like the only way out is through. The only way to keep going on our hero's journey and to get to the other side is to allow it, to
Mm.
move through it, to be with it, to surrender to it, and to trust it.
Yeah. You're so right that if I didn't have this framework, if I maybe even if I hadn't gone through the hero's journey a couple times and like knew what the stages are, what the flavors are, I very, very well could have had all of these things come up in my life and go, "Oh, this might be the wrong time. I've
Mhm.
got stuff to deal with." We're in this phase where in the creation process there's extra energy output. We're creating right now, and all of a sudden life emotions and things are bubbling that's taking so much bandwidth that if I didn't know better, I would think, "Oh, this must be bad timing. I got to go handle my stuff. I don't have energy for this." But what's really interesting is I'm noticing a flavor of um just noticing, like not making too many stories about it, knowing I'm extremely depleted, no bandwidth, a lot of processing, a lot of emotions. But what happens when I put one foot in front of the other? And what I notice is despite the fears, the exhaustion, the emotions, the like being called to handle other personal things, what I notice is that like at every step that's important to walk towards our vision, somehow I'm able to do it. And it's like, oh, okay. Like I might have not a lot of bandwidth, but for some reason, the universe or some part of me is giving me enough to keep walking this path, which feels like a really wonderful sign.
And that goes back to the undertone of path and trials and failures and death and rebirth. From the outset, it looks all bad. But
Mm,
at every step of the way, we will find like enough energy to take that next step.
yeah.
The right person to help us, the right, even this conversation, this timing. Think about like the
Yeah.
timing of this conversation. Like this, even this conversation is helping me. I think it's helping my transition in death and rebirth. You
Mm,
know, there are if we're moving through this process, this stage, like mindfully enough, presently enough, we can also see the undertones of support
yeah.
and the exact thing we need and not a moment sooner,
Mm,
you know?
totally.
So let's talk about what comes after rebirth.
Yeah. Not because we're there yet, but because we
No,
know we've been there
what's
before.
coming? It's coming, it's coming, it's coming.
This will feel really nice to look towards because
Yeah.
this is where we're aimed next, and it'll feel real good to get there.
So stage 7. So we're still in the underbelly of the unknown world. We haven't crossed back into the ordinary world yet. So this death and rebirth is right at the, at the very bottom of the circle there, death and rebirth. And then the next stage is called revelation. And this is again after the hero has had a sense of rebirth, a sense of finding something within themselves that they didn't even know existed, like a strength, a creativity, a faith, an energy, an overcoming of the limiting beliefs or the old ways of being that were once holding them back. There's this revelation that happens, and it's this change in perception, this like sudden change in the way that you perceive themselves, you perceive life, you perceive even the journey. You this recognition of this power that lives inside of you. um it's almost like your lens is cleared. I can see clearly. You also the path, it just like starts to open up. This is where like things start to you're just like taking a breath on the other side, which leads to the next phase, which is this we call it radical atonement. And when you look back at your hero's journey and you realize, oh, all those people mirroring me, all those situations mirroring me, all the even the experiences that perhaps led to a death and rebirth, they were for something. Like they
Mm.
helped me to arrive here. You think back to all of the, I think about in that big hero's journey I was talking about, where moving from entrepreneur or corporate to entrepreneurship, I think about all the people who would look at me funny and like ask me like, what are you thinking of doing? Like, and they were really important pieces of my journey. They had me questioning everything. And if I didn't have people mirroring that to me, I would not have had the experience a, of these things bubbling up to the surface, these limiting beliefs that I needed to look at bubble up. I needed to believe in me when no one else did
Mm.
in order to get to my other side of that hero's journey. I had to believe in me without my parents' approval or this other whatever other people's approval of like, you are doing a good thing, you are making a good decision, like this is sound. I needed to own that. I needed to believe that despite what anyone else was saying. That was like such a key part of that hero's journey for me. And so getting to this radical atonement, it was this, rather than staying angry at the people who looked at me funny or didn't believe in my dreams and like go like, ha, see, I did it anyway. It was like, thank you, like you were part of my process, you were
Mm.
part of the process. And oftentimes that energetically shifts things. And what I found was the people who were, when I shifted something inside of me, the mirroring began to shift as well. All of a sudden the people who were questioning my choices and my decisions were my biggest fans and so
Yeah.
proud. Not always, but sometimes that can in and of itself, that mind frame shift can shift the energy around and shift the way we perceive the world. And so this radical atonement is a is perhaps a forgiveness of what came before, a letting go of what came before, a recognition that whatever that was part of the process to help me get where I am today and help me step into the version of myself who I need to be today.
One of the flavors that I really actually appreciate about radical atonement is radical atonement is also the moment where you get to see something that made you doubt yourself before no longer has any hold on you. And you get to like experience that moment. Whereas before, someone doubting you and saying, like, oh, your business is going to fail. The coaching market's oversaturated. Like, what is a life coach? Whereas before, that might have made you crumble. Now you can hear it and go, oh, yeah, it's your opinion. That doesn't affect me. You're immune to it now. You have transmuted whatever you need to transmute to not be affected in that way. And oftentimes I find there's like moments where you get to like prove that to yourself a little. There'll be a moment, whether it's, someone else saying something negative or a moment where um, what's coming to mind for me is like, in a relationship dynamic where before my pattern would have been to be like, oh, maybe I'll just be like extra nice and extra understanding because I just want to keep this connection. Instead of that old pattern, there's an opportunity to you've had the revelation. Oh, this is who I want to be. This is how I want to move through the world. This is what I'm going to choose. And you have a moment to choose different, like, and say, oh no. And then you get to be that version of you. And there's something really like solidifying, like that moment where you take that step and you are this new, you are this new version and you're immune to the old ways. The old fears don't grip you. It's a really triumphant moment, I think. And I love that feeling. And even if in that moment everything hasn't 100% materialized before your eyes, you know it's coming, or you're not you're like, "Oh, no, I am this person, and I know it's coming." And it feels so good and triumphant.
You know you're on the precipice.
Yeah.
Like, it might as well all be here because you feel it. You feel it vibrationally, energetically before all the pieces have
Yeah.
manifested yet. All the pieces have perfectly arrived into place. What a feeling that is.
Mm.
What a beautiful feeling that is.
Yeah.
Okay, the road back home. This is the final stage before you've, as your the road back home is your return to the ordinary world, your return, your arrival. Um, this is the full embodiment, the full stepping in, whatever that might look like. And this is where you are the version of yourself that you had set out, like as you were saying, and this is the arrival. This is the embodiment of you in the world as this next iteration of who you are. And then the pieces and the puzzle pieces of the external manifestations start plopping into place. And again, it might not be, the vision might actually look kind of different than how you started out, but the energy is the same, the vibrational frequency is there. And what's most important is you, like who, the arrival of you, of and so this is the full circle, the full circle moment where we start all over again.
Mm. And
Yeah.
it probably never
And
ends.
it probably never, ever, ever ends. And this is growth.
Yeah.
This is the journey of growth, of creativity, of birthing new realities into the world, of continuously evolving into the next expression and iteration of you.
Mhm.
This is the journey.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you mentioned earlier, towards the beginning of the conversation that, like, no one's meant to live in the deep underworld all the time, and no one's meant to live in the ordinary world all the time. And I think that's another reason why this framework is so helpful, because I know there's been a lot of times in my life, like, before I knew this framework, where I would do some growing and I'd come back into the ordinary world and life would feel like, "Oh, I've got it figured out and life's gonna be good now." And then when time would go by and I found myself, like, either, like, in a depression or struggling, I would think, "What did I do wrong? I must have failed. I must have gone off track again." I assumed being back in the hard stuff meant I had gone backwards, I have failed, and that's really disheartening, you know? So just to know about those cycles, I think is so helpful. For me, it's so helpful actually to remember that I don't belong in either side permanently. It's helpful to remember I'm not in the light, bright, ordinary world all the time, prancing through a meadow with flowers, and that doesn't mean there's anything wrong. And also, it doesn't always have to be extremely gut-wrenchingly hard. I'm also not meant to spend every day of my life just, like, trying to touch pain and limiting beliefs. Like, it can also be easy, because I went through a phase where, I had gone through a really deep hero's journey, feeling feelings, crying all the time. And then for a little while, I was coming back into the ordinary world. I almost forgot how to operate in the ordinary world because I knew it was so powerful to go through that deep inner journey that I almost, like, thought I was doing something wrong that I wasn't crying so much anymore because I knew the crying was good for me and it was so cathartic. And I kept almost trying to, like, access that same energy. Like, I know what that did for me, and I was looking for, like, "Oh, I gotta find the pain, I gotta cry." And it's really helpful to remember, no, no, it's just there are seasons and there are cycles, and what you need while you're in your path of trials and failures and death and rebirth is different. There's different times, and neither are right or wrong. They're both right. They're both needed. And don't worry if you're missing the crying, universe will bring you back sooner or later and you'll cry again. And if you're thinking it's like so dark and I can't keep going, don't worry. Like you will come back up and there will be ease.
Another thing I think is important, there is such a difference between hard in the ordinary world, refusing the call off your path, and hard on your path in trials and failures, in death and rebirth. Both are hard.
Mhm.
There is such a different feeling to the hard. And I
Yeah.
think that's important because oftentimes we think when life is hard or resistant or we're on the wrong path, we're on in the bushes, we're in the detour, we're on the detoured route, we're living inauthentically or whatever it might be, but that's not true. Always hard in the ordinary world, refusing the call, suppressing, living a life that we know is not ours, on the detoured route. That kind of hard can feel stagnant. It can feel boring. It can feel, for me, sometimes it's felt like my whole world is just really small. And
Yeah.
like I'm getting caught up in like the dramas of the everyday world, or I'm like,
Mm.
the points in my life I could see myself like wrapped up in other people's dramas because that made me feel good about my own dramas. And like, it just like, oh, that's hard. That's yuck. Like, that's
Yeah.
hard. Or just feeling like, oh, the rat race,
Frustrated.
frustrated, you know, versus I'm on my path. I'm believing in myself. I'm taking these steps forward, but I'm in the trials and failures or in the death and rebirth. That's like if you tap into the energetic signatures of both of those hards, it's very different.
Yeah.
And I think that's important to internally discern to know whether or not you're on the right path or not. You're on your
Yeah.
path or not.
I think you're so right. I think that's why I missed the feeling of crying because even though the cry, like, it's hard to feel pain. It's hard to face fear and see the like pain and the things underneath it. It's hard. Um, but I much prefer that type of hard. Like I find the feeling of stagnation and frustration and anger from refusing the call and being a place that I don't want to be. I find that in do not do well in that phase, but the type of hard of being on your path and like touching the pain and moving forward in the direction your soul is calling you despite the fears. Oh, it's I would rather that kind of hard. I would choose that kind of hard any day of the week. And there's almost a flavor of yeah, like I weirdly like crying. I'm like, yes, I'm in it. This is what's good for me. you know? Yeah.
Well, I feel like we have thoroughly explored the hero's journey here. And Michelle, is there anything else that you think we've missed?
Nothing is coming to me that I think we've missed. I'm wondering if maybe um if you step back, look at the whole thing, look at your many heroes' journeys, especially around vocation, corporate to entrepreneur, solo entrepreneur to creating the Mind Rebel Academy. Um and the beginnings of this, if you zoom out and you look at it all, do you have any words of wisdom for the others who are stepping into some sort of hero's journey around their vocation, whether they want to follow in your footsteps and become an entrepreneur and a coach out in the world? Like, what would
Mm.
you want to send them off with wherever they are on that?
I have this image coming back to me of, I don't know what that noise is. I don't know if anyone could hear that noise, but there's some strange noises going on in the background here. I have this vision when you ask that question, and I'm sitting in my cubicle with this great big dream that is getting stronger and stronger and stronger inside my heart. And I'm sitting inside my cubicle with the golden handcuffs on, and my background image is this picture of a woman standing at a cliff, and she's staring over the cliff, And the words, the quote, "What if I fall?" And the rest of the quote reads, "Oh, my darling, but what if you fly?"
Mm.
And I am staring at that vision, at that quote, at that girl every freaking day with this dream in my heart and this gripping fear everywhere else in my body. um, and these babies at home and these bills to pay and the golden handcuffs on, and knowing that I was meant for something else. And that part was actually the hardest part. That part was the hardest.
Mm.
I think about when that part finally became more uncomfortable than crossing a threshold. And then all the stuff that came after that. Were there times that I was brought to my knees? Hundreds, hundreds. Were there times where I didn't know if we would make it, or if I would make it as an entrepreneur? Tons. Were there times that I questioned all my decisions? Many, 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 many. But nothing was harder than that time, right? The hard part is crossing the threshold. And what happens when we cross the threshold is we find the inner resources, we find the inner resilience, we find the inner courage, we find the strength if we allow ourselves to be completely broken open. Like if we surrender to the actual process of what is required for us to change, for what is required for us to step into that next version of ourselves. Like we're like at the mercy of a process of like being tossed around like but that is the good kind of hard. Like that's the kind of hard I want to be in. And the other part, that is painful. That is
Mm.
painful. That is painful. That's the hardest part.
Mm. Yeah. Okay. Did this bring you any clarity for where you are right now?
Yeah. I'm trying to speed up death and rebirth right now. Really hard. And it's just this invitation to, oh, stop trying to even micromanage that part. Like, stop. Just let it crumble. Let it crumble. One of the biggest stories I'm inside of right now is, can I trust myself? And I think that's a theme of this hero's journey, is this inner trust. And so that's been crystallized for me in this conversation, that I know the only way through this hero's journey to the other side is to trust myself, is to trust myself,
Yeah.
is to putting one foot in front of the other, be really gentle with myself through this time, but to just trust myself. What
Yeah.
about you?
A couple little mini bits of clarity for me. I think there's a similar element of trust for me. What one of the flavors of this hero's journey for me is to trust in my goodness and my worth. And that was actually a flavor in, my last hero's journey as well. It's just trust in my goodness and my worth, um, in a new flavor, in this realm of the give and take and receivership and what's possible and abundance, and in all sorts of ways, in vocation, also in life, just I trust in my goodness, I trust in my worth, and I trust I will receive that. It's nice to kind of name that as one of the main flavors. And the other thing, which is a little bit, I'm like, oh, that's kind of nice. As we were talking about revelation, I realized, so I had a really big breaking, there's been a few days of breaking points, and I realized, oh, you know what? I think last night I and today, I think I'm actually starting to touch some of the places of revelation. And we didn't talk about this too much, but like, generally we always we head around, but it doesn't mean you're always constantly heading forward. Sometimes there's a little bit of like, ooh, back and forth. So I'm not saying I'm through death and rebirth. I'm just realizing I am starting to touch some of the flavors of revelation, and that makes me feel good. Like I feel it there. We're moving, we're going, and um I really have this feeling for all of us that all of our heroes' journeys aren't going to be synced up to the precise exact day, but I just have this sense that the energy of me moving through mine will be felt by you and the other team members and vice versa. I just have this sense of like I think we're all going to move through this together, and I feel like there's a correlation between my personal bits of revelation and just the teams, like this beautiful thing we're creating together. So I am feeling excited, really. That's what I'm leaving with. A little more lightness than I felt over the it's been a dark week, and I'm feeling the rays of sunshine. Like be like, "Oh, I forgot those exist, rays of sunshine." And it's feeling really nice.
Awesome. Thanks for this. Thank you so much for being part of this conversation. If you are drawn to the MRA, it's more than likely that you are the go-to person for your people. You are here to deeply impact the lives of those you love and serve. And the MRA's mission is to support you in your life's work. To learn more about our suite of trainings, including our renowned flagship coach training, leadership trainings, and continuing coach education programs, please visit our website at www.themindrebel.com.